Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk for a minute. What is it about algebra that people can't stand? Whenever the word algebra is mentioned, it's like, oh, I get complaints from my students all the time. Why do we have to do this? Well, algebra is used a lot. The thing about algebra is you have to stop thinking arithmetically and start thinking logically and algebraically. Here are 10 jobs that involves algebra.
It's like every day.
The first job that involves algebra is a jeweler. Not only do jewelers sell jewelry to the customer, but they evaluate the quality and the value of the jewelry, as well as fix broken jewelry. This needs algebra. The second job I have on my list that requires algebra is an air traffic controller. They need to proficiently and independently calculate the aircraft's speeds, distances, and times, and they need to independently resolve issues. And this requires algebra. They need to do this algebraically and logically and work out the times that's needed for the aircraft to land safely. The third job I have on my list that requires algebra is a nutritionist. A nutritionist needs analytical skills because they need to assess the problem that their patients have. They need to alleviate the symptoms and improve their overall wellness. They need to look analytically into the medical symptoms of their patient and get into the algebra of it as well in order to help the patient to improve on their issues that they have. The fourth job I have on my list that requires algebra is a carpenter. Funnily enough, I wanted to do carpentry when I was at school. I used to go to an all-girls school back in England, and I wanted to do carpentry. I wanted to build stuff with my hands, and they told me that that wasn't a job for a female. Sounds familiar, right? With some children that's been put off from doing the job that they want to do. But anyway, a carpenter, what's needed for that is they have access to blueprints. They make blueprints. Typically, they design and make furniture out of wood. So they need to be able to use algebra to measure and construct and do all the things that they need to do to build what they need to build. So that definitely requires algebra. The fifth job that I have on my list that involves algebra is a buyer or a purchasing agent. They purchase, they evaluate, they negotiate, and they purchase objects for their buyers to sell. And where's the math that's involved here? So what happens here is they compare the suppliers' prices to make sure that they're getting the best rate for the products. And they also use simple calculations and algebraic calculations and problem-solving calculations to be able to present to their clients to get the best rate. The sixth job on my list that requires algebra is an architect. Architects' jobs very complex in math. They develop plans, they develop blueprints, and all their plans include everything from the AC to the heating, the electrical, plumbing. So they're involved in all aspects of algebra, higher levels of math, and intricate development in the mathematical area to be able to develop what you live in, right? So to look at the beauty of it, especially in the architectural sphere of the math, then you're looking at buildings that require a good amount of algebra in that. So if you're interested in architectural designs, you can keep in mind that algebra is definitely in there. The seventh job I have on my list that involves algebra is a baker. Math is used in every step of baking. Algebra. You have to measure, you're weighing, you're sorting out temperature, you're using different units of measurement. So we know that the kitchen is like a math lab, isn't it? So you're using all different levels of math during baking, and especially, yes, algebra is used in baking. The eighth job on my list that involves algebra is a high school teacher. If you love working with the teenagers and the older children, then you know that you're going to be looking at science and chemistry, biology, and some math. So that's definitely going to involve your algebra there. So you're going to be doing lots of teaching, training, calculating, and working out formulas for them to be able to assess and work out themselves, and thinking analytically and critically using algebra. So yep, if you want to work with the older children and you want to be a high school teacher, know for definite that you're not going to be able to get away from the math. You're going to also have to deal with the math and the science, and that's definitely going to involve algebra. The ninth job I have on my list that requires algebra is a computer engineer, or a programmer. If you like to work with computers and you like to do coding and programming, C++, HTML, JavaScript, SQL, you might not have to work with all of those, but you're going to have to know at least one or two. And then what that involves is also critical thinking, analytical reports you're going to have to write out, solving problems. If you're programming and coding and something goes wrong, you're going to have to use those algebraic equations to solve the problems during the programming and coding and be able to work things out. And that brings me on to my 10th and final one, which is also to do with computers, which is being a gamer. Yeah, you might not think that algebra and math is used in being a gamer, but when you're doing gameplay scripting, you are using math, you're using algebra, you're using gaming architecture, architectural design, you're using programming, you're using all of that type of stuff as well. So you best believe that you're going to be using algebra and math when you're doing gaming. So keep that in mind too if you wanted to look into something like that. But there you have it. Basically, algebra is involved in a lot of things that you may or may not be interested in. If you know someone who can't stand algebra and but they're interested in one of the things I've mentioned, then let them know that algebra is definitely involved in that. So when you hear algebra, you know, don't knock it. Don't knock it. It's a good thing. It's used a lot, and so you'll be surprised. And there are even other jobs that I didn't mention in this video that involves algebra. So let me know if there's any other jobs that you're interested in that might involve a little bit of algebra too. And that's all from me today, and I will see you next time in another math video. Thank you for watching. Class dismissed.